Hey friends, familia, beautiful humans, welcome to our celebration of Black contributions to health and wellness. We are joined by an esteemed panel of not just good folks, good people, but incredible fitness professionals. Within their regards, they hold and highlight different aspects of involvement within their communities on this planet. And before anything else begins, as we begin all of our classes online, may I invite you all to take a couple of balanced breaths, just giving the body an opportunity to breathe in, consciously exhaling, and then one more on your own, just like that. And what that's highlighting is the opportunity to invite a calming effect, a decompression. The power of our breath is deeply rooted in a lot of what we teach as individual trainers. And here at Balanced, we are an absolutely brand-forward digital platform that caters specifically to adults 50 plus. And I read that and was like, oh Lord, I'm only 3 years away from 50. Oh, goodness gracious. And each of our classes are designed by professional physical therapists, doctors of physical therapy, fitness professionals, and we cater to all aspects of movement to meet the specific needs of older adults. And today, I have the esteemed honor of hosting to highlight and celebrate Black coaches and their contributions to health and wellness, while at the same time identifying BIPOC communities, BIPOC standing for Black, Indigenous, people of color, highlighting those communities that might be underserved by digital fitness. My name is Cesar F. Barajas. I'm one of your Balanced coaches and trainers. I'm an international wellness mentor and activist, proud HBCU grad. I am a veteran and a national ambassador for the Veterans Yoga Project, where I teach trauma-informed, healing-centered yoga to our veterans in their communities. I'm also an Everyman attendee and facilitator, and the Everyman is a men's peer-to-peer support, where I there on the platform host and facilitate the BIPOC-only men's support groups. Also the creator and founder of thejourneywithcaesar.com, and I would love to take us into a place where we can agree. So by show of hands or just raising the roof, can we agree to be present? Can we agree to lean into whatever feelings may arise as we have this wonderful discussion? Can we agree to actively listen? And can we agree to speak to our own experiences, knowing that who we are as individuals is what is detrimentally important? So thank you all for agreeing to that. I'd love to quickly, but not, thank you very much. I am a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha. I would love to run through our bios so that we have time for our esteemed panelists to speak to. And first and foremost is our dear friend, Dr. Andrew Ward, who is our in-house doctor of physical therapy, therapist, one of two that we have on staff. And Dr. Andrew earned his doctorate in physical therapy in 2017 from Ithaca College, where he competed also as a track and field athlete and later coached the men's team. He's been very fortunate to work as a physical therapist within diverse and varied rehab environments, including those with high performance endurance athletic capabilities. He's been in an acute spinal cord injury unit with homebound older adults, and now with Balanced, helping to build the future of fitness for healthy aging. Dr. Andrew's personal mission is to help more humans to access the lifelong health benefits of consistent exercise. Dr. Andrew Ward, thank you so much. Moving on to our dear friend, Joe Buckner, who's one of our also Balanced trainers, who is an executive and men's lifestyle coach, a boxing fitness entrepreneur. And Joe likes to share with people that he helps busy dads become champions for themselves and their family. Please, please, please highlight some of Joe's work. Visit him at www.mrjoebuckner.com. And if our wonderful moderator and tech assistants, production designers can throw those into the chat, that would be amazing. Next up is the wonderful, effervescent Manny Sanchez, another one of our balance trainers, who is an artist, identifies as Afro-Latina, is a mom to Yoshi the Sheltie, is a dancer, a model, and a fitness professional. And then joining us, certainly not least, but last in the lineup right here, is Carlos Davila, who's another one of our balance trainers, who is a proud father to two of the most beautiful boys I've ever seen in my life. He's an adjunct professor, a fitness professional, wellness advocate, director of equity and inclusion consultant, and is an executive coach. May I get you all to unmute and say hello, all at the same time. Let the cacophony of sounds reign in.
Hello.
Hey,
Oh.
Yay! I'll tell you where I stole that. The director and founder of Veterans Yoga Project would often ask us in Zoom meetings, especially over the last 3 years, to just unmute, because then we now have a sense of being in the same space. together. So it's a way to connect virtually. So with all of that being said, let us jump right into our field of questions. And of course, if you have any questions, listeners, please feel free to throw them in the chat. The chat is being monitored. Or if you're watching this at a later date, feel free to reach out to us at Balanced. We absolutely love hearing from you. So I would love to just, first off, open up the past. Pacemakers, blood transfusions, neurosurgery on conjoined twins, open heart surgeries. These are just a few of the areas in which Black medical experts have advanced the healthcare that we're all very familiar with today. The healthcare contributions made by Black physicians, researchers, and other medical professionals are vast. And we're not even just talking health and wellness. Let's just talk about the contributions of Black professionals in the founding of this very country. All that being said, one example is Dr. Daniel Williams III, who in 1893 was the first person, one of the first persons to successfully perform open heart surgery. In 1894, he was then appointed as the chief surgeon of the Freedmen's Hospital. In 1895, he founded the National Medical Association for Black Medical Practitioners. So my first question to our panelists, and we can do this popcorn style, so feel free to jump on in, is does anyone here have a notable Black influence in health and wellness that played specifically an inspirational role in your life? Joe, I'd love to hear from you, sir.
I'd say for me, it was actually Lee Haney, who's an 8-time Mr. Olympia, and in a sport that, you didn't see a lot of Black faces dominating coming up. And also, I'm 47, so I'm also 3 years away from 50. So for a lot of us in that age group, there was a time when health and wellness meant bodybuilding. Like that was it. And so Lee Haney was the guy. And I used to wake up early on Saturday and watch his shows. I buy every magazine that had Lee Haney on it. And I'd probably say for, the bulk of my life after leaving college football, I trained like a bodybuilder because like I just had this Lee Haney picture in my brain for so long. So Lee Haney, Sean Ray, all those guys, Dexter Jackson were guys who I just emulated and loved watching.
Thanks for sharing that, Joe. You say that, and immediately what comes to my mind is the Ronnie Colemans of the world, So I appreciate you sharing that, talking specifically to Lee Haney. Anyone else care to contribute to a notable influence? I'd love to hear from Manny, and then Carlos, your own deck, sir.
Absolutely. I actually didn't find out about her till much later in my Pilates training, but Kathleen Stanford Grant. She is a first generation Pilates instructor. She studied directly under Joseph Pilates. She was an African American woman, and she was also a dancer, which are like my two passions. I didn't find out or learn about her till much later in my training. But once I did, it actually like catapulted my passion even more, because if it wasn't for her, I mean, she was one of the few people to carry the legacy of Pilates. Because, back then it was just Joseph was like, okay, I'm going to train people in my technique, and y'all are the ones that are going to carry on this technique. So she was just so important to that legacy. And then she's also so important in the legacy of Dance Theater of Harlem. So, in these two like major worlds of just health and fitness, because I consider dance being part of that too. And she's not spoken about too much. I mean, I didn't find out about her till much later. And I just, I remember feeling, very outcasted during my training. Had I known about her, it would have just given me a different fire during my training, So yeah, that's someone who I always remember and look up to and go back to when I need inspiration.
That's beautiful. Kathleen Stanford Grant, one of the initial pioneers of Pilates. And Manny, be on deck. I actually have a follow-up question for you that I'd love to touch up with you. Next up is my hombre from another madre. What's up, man? Carlos.
There we go. I'm finally unmuted. How are you, man? So happy to be here, y'all. Honestly, just really excited to be sharing this space and kind of having these conversations. I do this work in a lot of different spaces. So it's just kind of, honestly, it's genuinely dope that, you know, Balance is creating a space for these type of conversations. So just wanted to, you know, give those flowers in the moment. But to your question, so the first thing that popped into my mind when you asked a question was, so as many of you may know, like CrossFit isn't the most, or is it known to be the most welcoming for people of color? And I knew that going into that space, you know, many years ago, you know, when I was an athlete within that space. And one of the humans that kind of normalized the space for me not only was an Afro-Latino, but was also like significantly older. So if you were a CrossFitter in New York, like you knew Jacinto Bonilla, right? And I want to say I was like mid 30s at the time. He was like in his 60s. And he would come in and wreck shop. Like, like on some, okay, Jacinto, like what are you on, my guy? Like,
Yo, would you
talk
mind
to
giving
me.
an example of what that meant? Like, what do you mean by rec shop?
So you know, CrossFit, as you know, it gets its fair share of stuff wrong. But one of the things that I appreciated about CrossFit was being able to do fitness in like very different modalities, right? So you're sitting there doing like stuff on the bar, then you're doing stuff with a barbell, then you're doing stuff on rings. And for me, being like relatively new to that space and not kind of understanding like the different components of it, you know, I was still wrapping my head around it. And then I saw this like 60-year-old dude that was just like crushing these like 20-year-old guys. And I was like, you know, to kind of juxtapose it with for me what the bigger picture was, it was like that's that level of like strength and capacity and like that need to like be the best version of yourself that like a lot of these spaces kind of force us into being, right? And like seeing Jacinto like be the only Latino, the only person of color that I
Mhm.
would see in that space, but the confidence that he had coming into that space and like everybody knew, dude, right? Like, and he earned that, right? Like that came from the sweat equity. For me, it normalized the space in a way that even knowing the problematic components of it, it still felt like home to me. And it
Sure.
to this day does. Like even with all the stuff and the moments that I've had where I've traveled to places and it hasn't felt like home, right? But a big part of why that space feels so comfortable for me is because I had this older Afro-Latino dude who made me feel like I belong there. Sorry, I'm very long-winded. I promise
That
not
is
to be
not
this
long-winded
long-winded
at
for the whole thing.
all.
Yeah.
Bro, you
But
just gave us a
yeah.
history lesson. So I appreciate you sharing that. And so who he's speaking to is Jacinto Bonilla, who is an avid New York-based CrossFitter. So again, CrossFitters have a certain stigma. Being older aged in this population has a certain stigma. Being an athlete has a certain stigma. Like everyone carries some sort of stereotypical title that often isn't put on themselves. And so I'm going to take a pause for the cause because the smiling yogi has joined us. I want to take a very important moment to highlight that we have now joined us Mr. Derek Harris, who is literally smiling his way through the challenges of life. He's a yoga instructor, an actor, a wonderful, gorgeous citizen of the world. Derek, thank you so much for tuning in. The first question we presented to the panel, and I'd love for you to say hello and ask you, cold read, no preparation, is to share with us if you have anyone that is a notable Black influence. And I'm going to ask us all, if we're in attendance, to mindfully mute ourselves. So just be mindfully aware that we can hear. Can you all still hear me? Okay, so I hopefully it sounds like it got muted. Please forgive that interruption to the question, Derek, but we're asking our wonderful panelists, and I'll give you a moment to consider it. Does anyone?
I already have somebody. I have someone
wonderful.
right away.
If you have
I
someone
will
who's
say,
an influence, come
yes.
on in. Jump on in,
Oh,
Derek. We'd love
yes.
to hear from you.
So
Dr. Ward,
first
you're on
off,
deck.
Apologies. I was actually I was teaching, so the work continues, and people are coming in and out of the studio. So if it gets really loud, I apologize for that. So I have many influences, but the first time I walked in the studio and saw someone who looked like me teaching was this brother Sherman Morris. And after class, we had the brother conversation. It was sort of, he knew something was going on because I have really long legs and I was a professional dancer, so my legs are going all over the place and all this, but he also felt my essence, I imagine. And so we had a conversation afterwards. I told him I was sort of new to the game, and he just took me under his wing. He was like, look, you can, and this was at Pure Yoga here on the West Side. And he was also teaching at other places like many of us do. And so he was like, you want to be my guest wherever I am? Come along. So I saw him at Yoga Works. I saw him at Exhale. Like I said, I saw him at Pure. But a brotherhood formed, and every time I step on the mat, I bring him. I bring Allison Kramer. I bring Leslie Kamenov. I bring Stephen Chang, like all of my teachers, I bring them with me. And I just offer whatever is on my heart. And I offer it from the heart. And it either lands or it doesn't. More times than not, it feels like it lands. I just had an incident today, literally in this class that I just taught, but I'm still smiling because something like that rarely happens. Someone wanted to come in and sort of, I don't know, kind of wanted to hijack the class. She didn't want to put the mat down. She didn't want to move forward when everyone else was moving forward and all of that. And I took a deep breath. And I just thought, you know what? She's not for me today, or we're not for each other, maybe not ever. But there are 20 other people in the studio that are here. So I just focus on that. So anyway, but Sherman Morris is the brother who, one of the first brothers that welcomed me in, and like I said, has had a huge impact on me in the world, especially more specifically as I teach.
Derek, that's a beautiful share. Thank you. So we're celebrating Sherman Morris, Allison Kramer, among others. That also raises a wonderful point. Dr. Ward, I would love to come back and hear your influence. And just something to consider is that you, just speaking to another human, took it upon yourself, regardless of black, white, polka dotted, purple, to take a breath, ground yourself, and then handle the situation. So I applaud your awareness. I would also love to mindfully just let people know who are listening in. It is much harder as a person of color to navigate a white space than it is for someone who is white to then navigate a black space. So please know that this isn't to separate us or to figure out who's right, who's wrong. It's just different. And so, Derek, this could have gone in a completely different way, but because I know you and I've had wonderful conversations with you and I know what's in your heart, you handled it the way that you do because you're not only just a professional, but you're also a great human. So thank you for sharing that. And Dr. Ward, would love, thank you for your patience to hear from you and hear about who any of your potential Black influences were in your life.
Yeah, it's so great to hear all these stories and all these influencers. One of my strong influences is I call him a historical figure, but he seems larger than life. But this gentleman, Ted Corbett, who's known as the father of American distance running, was born the grandson of a slave on a cotton farm in 1919 in South Carolina. Served in the military, and with his GI Bill went to NYU and studied physical therapy. And he was an alpha, and he was a competitive distance runner. So already a great resume, but he was prolific in the New York running scene and actually won the Philadelphia Marathon a few times. He competed as the first African-American in the 1952 Helsinki Olympics. He helped to found the Pioneer Club here in New York, which was one of the first integrated running groups. He was the first president of the New York Roadrunners, helped to design the New York City marathon course. And so it's had this really prolific running career that helped to shape distance running as we know it in New York City, which continues to be one of a fairly diverse and a really active group and a really active force here in the city. The fact that he was a physical therapist and a distance runner is just a great inspiration to me. And he also broke barriers and did that while welcoming other people into the conversation and building something that we all still get to enjoy today. His first marathon, he ran in 2:48. And at age 62, he ran his last marathon in 2:52. And so he had a long and enduring distance career and didn't get much slower. And my understanding is he didn't lose his smile along the way. So Ted Corbett, for whom the outer loop of Central Park is named, is one of my great inspirations.
Yes. Oh, what an awesome tidbit of information to learn. And friends, our own Dr. Andrew Ward, who ran hurdles and did a lot of faster running in college, is training for his first marathon. And I had the pleasure of going on a run with him the other morning, of which I'm still sore, by the way, and I only did 4 miles. But all the best to you. It's beautiful to learn and to celebrate Ted Corbett. To close out the past section of our particular portion here is to ask each of you if there's an older aged influence in your life. And I'd love to hear from whoever would like to potentially go first. And that can be someone you know or someone historically, but that with age got either stronger, got faster, continued to do what they do. Carlos highlighted Jacinto Bonilla, who at 60 plus was, rocking and wrecking shop. Joe, we'd love to hear from you.
That man for me was a legend named Early Thomas. Early played professional football for the New York Jets and the Denver Broncos. He is my best friend's father. He passed this past summer. But E.T., no matter his age, you'd see him every day at noon at the gym, working out, running on the treadmill. And when he was like 45, he set a national record in the 100 meters. He's a 2-time All-Pro in the NFL. So a lot of times, people don't keep that up after they finish playing. And yet he was so dedicated to his health and his wellness that he never skipped a workout. He was super dialed in with his food. And so it was always inspiring for me getting firsthand knowledge of this man, because I had no father. So he was basically my father, for me to be able to put my eyes and say, that's what being an older Black gentleman looks like. You're strong, you're capable, you're a man of faith, like you're just a beautiful, beautiful human. But that man was the picture of health and strength. And sadly, he succumbed to his battle with Parkinson's last year, but he was everything. And so for me, he gave me a new lens on what aging was supposed to look like, because he refused to age.
I love that. So condolences to you and yours on the loss of E.T. Sounds like a phenomenal human. Thank you for sharing that. Would anyone else like to jump in and specifically name or speak to an older aged influence? Dr. Ward, sir.
Yeah. I've been privileged to work with a number of older adults and have a lot of folks who have truly inspired me. But one of my first patients as a treating physical therapist was a guy named Frank McCallie back in Ithaca, New York. And his goal was to get back out into the woods, as he put it. And so he had some knee pain, and he was a 7-year-old man, and he was determined to go on his daily hike. And just that perseverance to do something so simple and so beautiful and so connected with himself and with nature, which is a great inspiration. And he was a very dedicated student or client, and did his homework and was successful in going in the woods. And I had the privilege of taking a few hikes with him after his discharge. But he just exuberated a thirst for life and a willingness to enjoy the little things. And so that continues to be a big inspiration for me.
Awesome.
My friend Frank McCallie. Thanks.
Frank McCallie. Frank, who got back out into the woods. Love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Would anyone else? Someone who's an older age influence? Manny, yes.
I was like sitting here like, okay, who do I choose? Because I have, but
choose them all.
I know, right? I think I'd like to highlight though, one of my clients who's now turned into a dear friend. Her name is Denise Bridgers, and she first came to me in 2018. Post, she had ovarian cancer. It's now in remission, and she's been. Thankfully, she's all good now. But she came to me like right after, everything happened. She wanted to try Pilates. And I mean, when I tell you she had cane, it took her 10 minutes to walk into the studio, 5 minutes to get on the reformer. I mean, I remember being like, okay, we're gonna make this happen. I'm not sure how, but we're gonna make this happen. And we did. And now here we are years later. This queen is doing
Hey,
and pikes and lunges and everything on the reformer. Like she wanted to get back in shape. She wanted to feel back in her body, and she did it. It was painful, and it was hard, but just to see that over the years and how she just continues to push, just always, it's just such an honor to have witnessed it, and it's so inspiring. So yeah.
beautiful. Celebrating Denise Bridges. That's so amazing. Would anyone else like to chime in with an older influence? And when I say older friends, please don't take offense. I'm talking about the experienced, the seasoned. Like, I'm also older. And if you get to know me, you've realized that I've lived multiple lives. So part of my own personal stance on life is to respect the elders because they're older, but also like they carry so much. And even if it doesn't align with who you are, like there's still the experience that's there. So that's who I'm speaking to. So again, no offense to the 47-year-olds in the room, to those that are approaching, I'm closer to 50 than I am 20 in the room. So with all that being said, we'd love to hear about anyone else. And Manny just shared that Denise is about to turn 65. That's a blessing to hear.
Yo, can I tap in real quick?
Joe, absolutely.
I'm sorry. I didn't fully understand the earlier question. I thought it was like someone when you were a child, but I cannot leave this conversation without giving flowers to my brother, Sean Jenkins from Tone House.
Brad?
Listen, so when I became a Lululemon ambassador, I was already 42 years old and I was Black. And I was like, is there actually space for me in this company? And that was the year that they did the Muse campaign. And so to see this big king walking the streets of New York, blonde dreads, leather jacket, and I was like, now I see something here that I can relate to. And Sean and I have become great friends since then. But I cannot leave this conversation without letting you know that Sean Jenkins has been one of the biggest influences on me. Let me know there was room for me in fitness. There was room for me at Lululemon. There was room for me to, just grow and not be afraid to be in the face of my gym as a Black person in a predominantly white space. So I didn't understand the other question, but Sean was also in his 40s when he was
Beautiful.
the muse of like Lululemon. So I couldn't leave this conversation without giving flowers to my guy, Sean Jenkins.
I'm certain he'll appreciate that. Yo, I'm certain either myself or Carlos are going to text him right after. And if you know, who I'm talking about
to say,
yo, Carlos, do you want to speak to Sean? Yeah, let's talk about him, please.
I mean, if I can add to that, and thank you for naming that, Joe. Like Sean helped me realize that I could be me in whatever space I walked into, whether it was a gym, whether it was the boardroom, whether it was, talking about Lululemon, about becoming an ambassador, and he just normalized a lot of things for me, right? And like SRJ is just SRJ, right? And like when you see that and you experience that and you're like, oh wait, like I can just be my dope, like, or introverted, or like whatever version of myself like I feel comfortable being, like that's who I should be. And like he definitely became sort of this very like, and again, like the funny thing about SRJ and I is like we kind of look at alike when he still had the locks before he went blondie dread. So there was always that like people assumed like we had this thing, and I was like, no, like that's my dude, like that's my heart right there. So like feeling comfortable in my own skin in a lot of different spaces, like SRJ definitely normalized that a lot for me. And like we were part of this and still all part of like this men's wellness collective, that he was one of the original members of. And like the fact that he's now shifting and like doing more business related stuff and like getting his degree at this, at we'll call it advanced age, like the fact that, yeah, man, I appreciate you bringing him up because he's definitely someone that has had that same impact for me as well.
Love, love, love. For those of you who are not aware, Sean Jenkins is a notable presence in the New York City Fit Fam, but just really another one of those good humans. So let's just take into consideration, here's someone who is older aged, period. But he is yet still in tune with what he's doing. And what I appreciate about Sean, aside from him being like one of my fraternity brothers, is he was one of the first persons that took me under his wing when I moved to New York. So I'd left the West Coast, I'd left teaching and coaching in the LA area outside of Houston, Texas. And Sean was one of those first individuals that said, yo, man, I see you. More importantly, I feel you. Let's be cool. And I immediately felt safe. So I think this is a wonderful segue into our conversation about present. So we've spoken to those in the past, we've spoken to those that have influenced us to get us to here. So I have a question for my panel in regards to, what do you feel are some of the current struggles facing Black folks in health and wellness? What are some of the barriers? Do we even begin to conversate about how to overcome them? But I want to know from each of you, if it's possible, what you feel are some of the current struggles and barriers facing Black folks in health and wellness. Carlos, sir.
So this is something that I've noticed recently, and I call it kind of the ideification of fitness. And I don't know if other folks have noticed this, but I think a lot of the very like attention seeking, like, this is not really fitness. Like I'm doing bicep curls with a spin bike. I'm, deadlifting a rack with like, 3 people on one end and a tire on the other, like all these kind of, in my opinion, and not, if that's your thing, that's your thing. No judgment, but like kind of goofy forms of fitness, right? It got to a point when I started to notice that I was only seeing that from Black fitness professionals. And it kind of, started, because again, I do a lot of the eye work, and like, this is something that like immediately, like that part of my brain starts working. And I started to have conversations with different like Black fit pros that I know. And I'm like, am I the only one that's kind of noticing this? I need to put on this like show, right? To put on this extravagant kind of ridiculous kind of experience for me to get attention as a fitness professional, right? And again, like, understanding my history and the history of this country, and like the history of people of color having to perform at times to be seen, to be accepted, to mitigate certain levels of discomfort that they may feel in certain spaces. So it's been, and I haven't figured out how to wrap my head around it, but I just wanted to name it. It's been interesting watching this sort of influx of, again, this like, and it's not even like just like a social media kind of thing, it feels like, right? Because like I get the TikToks and I get it. Live your best life, right? But for me, it's almost like when you're normalizing this, in my opinion, ridiculous sort of form of fitness, like you're actually becoming a detriment to wellness, right? You're becoming a detriment to what we're normalizing as fitness professionals. Like I've had so many times where I'm teaching a class and I literally have to unteach something that someone saw on social media. So I think for me, that's become what feels like a hurdle or something that I feel like I'm sensing Black fitness professionals feel like they need to add to what they bring to the table, because it feels like what they inherently just bring as a fitness professional doesn't seem like it's enough. And that may just be like my interpretation of what I'm seeing. But it's just something that I've been noticing that I wanted to name.
Do you mind if I ask you a follow-up question to that?
Absolutely.
So in not highlighting the absurdities, because, it's a social media age, friends, like our people's specifically global attention spans last this long. So unless you've got something that's quick, most folks won't pay attention. I've been in the entertainment business for 30 years. And we've been told literally, like casting directors will sit down and within the first 6 to 7 seconds of watching your audition tape, want to continue watching 6 to 7 seconds. So in not highlighting the absurdities, and this is a question I pose for the rest of you as well, Carlos, how do you specifically come back to the basics? So with what you do here at Balanced and other modalities and where you coach and teach, how do you make sure that you're touching up on the basics? Or how do you get people away from those absurdities?
I mean, it's acknowledging that fitness doesn't always have to be sexy, right? Like fitness can be functional, right? Like if I'm connecting the why behind your movement to you being able to, when your 2-year-old grandchild is coming at you in a full sprint, you to be able to stop what you're doing, rotate at your midsection, be able to hinge properly, be able to distribute weight as you're extending your arm forward to grab that child, and then be able to still rotate and come back up as you're rotating that child forward while they're still moving, which is offset weight, right? Like, if I can explain to you that what we're doing is connected to that experience and allowing you to have a more functional experience at whatever age you're at, like that for me makes a lot more sense, right? That for me, it's not sexy, but it's kind of dope, right? It's kind of dope that like I can have an impact on someone's literal quality of life being better, right? Them being able to mitigate a possible injury or live a life that feels a lot more engaging and functional. And like that's the quiet part out loud, is like we spent the last 2 years terrified of being outside, terrified of engaging with our environment, and that's going to impact how we move in those environments. Like a lot of us don't realize we're hella anxious when we're outside. We're carrying a lot of that with us, right? So being in spaces where we understand that, right? We see that bigger picture and we understand that we're trying to create movement, we're trying to create different ways of engaging with your body that allow you to like genuinely tap into what your body should be doing and make it functional. I think for me, like that's what I want us to focus on. Like that for me is what's quote unquote sexy.
Yo, muchísimas gracias for that. What a remarkable answer. Would anyone care to reflect on that or go back to the original question about what kind of struggles or barriers specifically communities of color are facing when it comes to health and wellness?
I mean, for me, you know, I live in a place that's not incredibly diverse, but even when I travel to New York, LA, wherever, there's still not enough of us. It doesn't matter what kind of class you're going through, there's always 1, 2, or 3. And you can't aspire to something that you've never seen. Therefore, if we don't see ourselves, why would we ever want to go into that space or feel welcome into that space? And I'm not just talking along the lines of, I think the other challenge is that we'd be lying to ourselves if we didn't say that fitness is incredibly expensive. It's incredibly expensive. And most fitness concepts, and mine is one of them, we don't even take into account the fact that 7 out of 10 Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So that $200, $300 a month price tag is immediately excluding a lot of people who, guess what? Very well may be people of color. So you can't even really begin to say, well, how are more of us going to be in the thing until we talk about the fact that how do we make fitness accessible to every body? And the first way that we have to address that is like, how do we make it more? And sure, someone could go to the park. They could go to the park. God bless them, they could. But if I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just going to be at the park jacking myself up, right? So for me, it's no different than being in a lot of other spaces. And I'm just going to be very succinct. You can't aspire to something that you've never seen. And no matter where you go, there's still not enough of us in any classroom, in any gym, in any bar, studio, Pilates, Rumble, boxing, Soul Cycle. There's just not enough of us. And so that to me is the challenge, because it's like, I know we're alive, we're out there somewhere. So how do we create those spaces, I can tell you in my community, the African-American population is 0.7, but I'm also Afro-Latino. Like my mother's Mexican. You guys see her in balance. Like there is one Black person that goes to my gym. There's Black people in my town. There's one Black person that goes to my gym. So that's the other challenge. Like, how do we get people in? But do you know who's the first person they call when they need someone to speak for Juneteenth? Or there's a Black business professionals meeting after this. Guess who they asked to come speak?
Mr.
But
Buckner.
you know how many of those people come to my gym?
Mm.
0. So that's another part of this. Like, I just don't know if we're creating enough welcoming spaces. And it's hard to walk into a space where you literally see 2 other people that look like you and feel comfortable. So
Thank you.
yeah, that's the
Joe,
challenge.
well said. Yes. Received, heard, celebrated, because it's something that within the realm of history isn't spoken to. It's the current hot topic when it comes to whitewashing. I'd actually love to ask again, for anyone else who would like to contribute, where they're currently at and how they're then potentially reaching out to communities. I, for example, have created my own digital meditation platform, online, very affordable, subscription-based. But it wasn't until I started my men's work, my own personal healing journey. I didn't even realize there was men's support groups. Nonetheless, a group where like Black and brown and Muslim American and Arab American men can gather to talk about feelings and be vulnerable. The only reason why I got asked to moderate this panel is because that's what I facilitate week to week. So they figured I would be the one to be able to engage. And so with that being said, I am actively doing what I can, but I'm only one person. What else can you do? What else can we do? And that's the question. How do we connect our community dots? I haven't heard Carlos, I see your hand up. Would love to acknowledge Dr. Ward and Derek. So if any of you would love to go first, and then I'd love to come back to Carlos.
So, actually, I would like to go back just a moment.
Sure.
There is that issue. We get to acknowledge the fact that as a yoga instructor, or as yoga instructor goes, like 75% of the instructors are white women. That's a given. And then, Black people are making up maybe 10% of the instructors. And I did do a little research and I saw statistically that hasn't been increasing. Like the demographic of Latinos that are teaching has increased some, but Black people aren't necessarily moving to that more. I don't necessarily subscribe to, in terms of my journey into teaching yoga, as I needed someone to be that for me. It was on my heart. So Spirit told me that I was going to teach. So I started to teach. And then I found other people that looked like me. So I was just being of service. I will say though, as someone, I was a professional dancer. And again, it's another one of those situations where things are very Anglophile. Like, this is what they consider to be proper alignment. This is what the body looks like. And if you don't look like this, then somehow you're not worthy. You're not doing it right. You don't matter. You need to be somewhere else. So I've had to negotiate that my entire career. That's why you have Dance Theater of Harlem. That's why you have Albany. That's why you have other companies that celebrate. That's why you have Motown. You celebrate the sound, right? And we get to be regal. We get to stand up and do our thing at the highest level. So the issue is, if we want to talk about the issue, is maybe that of finding more or supporting Black-owned studios, or studios of color that are owned by, however that works. And then creating, there is actually an app, I think it's called Own and Essence, where the sister that founded it wanted to create sort of this pipeline for people of color to find people of color in the yoga arena or in the wellness space. And I think if we can create a larger collective, if you will. So if we start to help each other in whatever our endeavors are, if it is, hey, I want to open up a studio. Hey, I want to do a retreat. Hey, I want to create a group. If we come together and we put all of our resources, our powerful energies together, then we create this space and then people will find us. It's just a matter, because I'm not tech savvy, Caesar. I'm not tech savvy. So if you're asking me to do it, I might cringe to a certain degree, but hey, ideas, I got a million of them. Facilitating it, how do we make that happen? I think that way. And then also to piggyback off what Joe said, it is cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So how do we bridge that gap as well? Who's reaching out? Are there ways to create some sort of a scholarship system or get people in line, align people or groups with studios so that the students, some of them can come, there are a lot of ways that we can approach it. I just don't know, obviously, the way, or what's the best way, but we need to take a step. And again, here I am saying we need to take a step. I am limited in terms of my technical abilities. But the reality is that tech is a huge part of the way things move these days. It's not like when I was younger and I would go to an audition. Now I get to submit myself online, So I just think that there are a lot more of us than we think. There still aren't as many of us as I would love for there to be, but by those of us that are here creating more noise, more people will find us.
Beautiful. Derek, what an absolutely valid point. I'd love to take this opportunity to highlight all of us here in some capacity are associated and connected to Balanced. And Miss Allison, I see your question. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. So I would love to highlight that, like, my parents, my mother at 72, my father at 78, cancer survivor, take all of your classes. I know someone in the chat mentioned that Manny was their favorite. So it was a matter of, okay, let me teach them how to open the Zoom. Let me teach them how to connect. Let me teach. So if we can take that patience. So Derek, I applaud you for taking the patience and doing what it is that you can do. It's creating community with those who are tech savvy that we then are going to find ourselves expanding and growing abundantly. It takes work though. So friends, thank you for participating in your own individual ways to highlight the work. Allison, would you like to chime in and jump in with a question that we have from one of our wonderful listeners?
Yes, this question is from Dr. Rob, another member of our physical therapy team here. He just posted, to Joe's point, could Balance be a platform to leverage trainers of color to a wider audience, increase visibility, question mark. He says, apologies if that's awkwardly worded, but I think he's just interested to pick your brains to see if there is a way that we can reach a larger audience via Balance based on, again, this kind of a merger of
would you repeat the question again? And then I'm going to ask you to highlight, because I can't see the question, whether wider is white as in WHITER or wider as in WIDER.
Yes, let me do it again. Could Balance be a platform to leverage trainers of color to a wider
okay,
audience?
So because I can't see the questions, I was like, yo, Dr. Rob, I love you, brother. He's just straight up getting there.
No,
okay.
Glad we clarified. Could it be a platform to leverage trainers of color to a wider audience, question, or just increased visibility?
Manny, I see you nodding yes. Would you like to field this?
Yes, because I mean, with everything that's been said and now this question, what if we did a community event? I'm thinking of I'm originally from Bushwick, born and raised. I've seen all the changes right by bedside. I've seen all the changes in Brooklyn, and I'm like, okay, what about going to those communities that still haven't changed and still has a lot of older folks that don't have accessibility, that live in like the more quiet residential areas and don't live by the cute, sexy, savvy studios? What if we go do a community event somewhere, and teach a class, a Balance class, and promote it that way? And it's, they can connect with us because they're like, oh, it's a fellow person of color. And, this person's from Brooklyn, or this person's originally from this area. So, that's already a connection, and that's already an invitation. And so that's already a platform to bridge that. And then that's also bringing our classes. So I don't know, maybe that, because I know I'm always being asked, everyone, I live on my block, everyone has seen me grow up here. Like my grandmother has been in this apartment for 40 years. So everyone's always like, oh, where are you going to go teach now? Like, they know I'm a fitness instructor, they know I'm a dancer. And they always ask questions, but they're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, you're going to go to the studio. You're going to go over there to do that. And it's like, okay, maybe at some point I'll bring that here, so that they can also partake. So yeah.
Thank you. What a wonderful way to stay connected, not just generationally with your own familia, but like within the community itself. And I know as a trauma-informed healing-centered yoga instructor, specifically for veterans, like when I walk into a VA, they see the tattoos, they see the cisgendered hetero-identifying man with the painted nails, and they're like, wait, what? And so there's automatically a connection when we're like, yo, on the real. Ain't no Sanskrit being taught, and nothing against that. But like, how do we bring it to a level so that people then are able to ingest and then digest? And that's what I love about your idea, Manny. Anyone else want to contribute to that particular question in regards to community or family?
I'd love to chime in for a moment.
Sure, please.
And just celebrate the amazing team we do have a balance. I mean, we have a diverse clinical team. We have a diverse set of trainers. We have young women as founders. We do have a really great story and a great team here. And I do think that in being proud of that and in displaying that widely and helping folks who are and facing it, older adults are also in some ways an underserved community. And so especially we can find those in that corner who are extremely underserved. And who might feel excluded from this new and blooming wellness space that is happening online. I think celebrating our story, but also helping to bring people into it and find the tech savviness required to log on to a Zoom or to log on to our website and experience the long-term health benefits of fitness. I do think we have a role to play here. And if we're doing digital fitness right, it should be incredibly wide-reaching into all the corners of the world. And so I do think being intentional with spreading that and intentional to where we spread that is a big part of what we can do here at Balance and what we can do as a training and a clinical team to do our part.
Dr. Ward, that's a natural and awesome segue into the future portion. So for those of you who are just tuning in or want to go back and rewind, we've broken this up into our past, into the present, and the future. And in going into the future, one of the great things about digital age is that this particular area of fitness can be inundated with so much. And so not only is there a lack of access to technology, but there really is. If you Google searched fitness videos, how many millions come up? I'm currently in the process of learning how to play the guitar. And I Googled beginner guitar chords. And it was too much. So how do we at Balance, how do we as a family here, how do you as an individual then continue to make something like that accessible as we delve into our future? And for those of you tuning in, the platform that we're on is one of, honestly, I think the easiest, and I use easiest in quotes because if I can log on, then we're good. If I know that my mom securely can log on, we're great. And this is nothing against my moms. Like my mom and I are the only two in our family that have an iPhone. So we're the only two that can FaceTime each other. And we teach each other things on our iPhones. So I love that we're advancing with what's going on. So how do we digitally continue to not just only expand, but like reach the masses? And maybe it becomes we go and do this particular community event, whether it's New York based or part of our team is currently on the islands in Hawaii and they're doing the on the trenches, on the ground footwork. I see Lil and Kel and Katie and Bradford and everyone has been out there working like diligently, like we think Hawaii, but no, they're out there reaching. And many of these communities, Hawaiian communities, are people of color. They're indigenous to the lands, and so it's beautiful to see that. And so looking forward to that potentially expanding here to the mainland. Being respectful of time, my friends, we've got 4 minutes left. I would love to hear any final thoughts, words of aspiration that you might have, and I would love to put you on the spot and pick on my man Carlos, since his hand is raised, to go first.
Honestly, one of the big reasons why I wanted to go first is I actually wanted to highlight what BJ, who is just a dear human to my heart, was highlighting in the chat about the New York Parks Department and a lot of programs that they offer as well for older populations. And I'm pretty sure we'll figure out a way to share that. And BJ, I'll follow up with you to figure out how to make that connection between that and balance. And for me, like that's what, you know, and even having a conversation around how balance can create, you know, or be a platform to augment these voices. Like, and I put this in the chat, like, I feel like we're already doing that. Like, I've been in spaces where I've been there for 7 years before we started talking about these type of topics and having these type of conversations. I've been at balance for 4 months, right? And I think there's so much value in this not being seen as different, right? This not being seen as aberrant. This is who we are as an organization. These are the voices, the faces, the experiences, the narratives that this space provides, right? And for me, like, I could have been in a lot of different places. I'm so happy to be here.
We are so graced to have you, Papa. Thank you for chiming in and sharing.
And I just
that.
want to give you flowers because you, good sir, are the reason that I am here, because you knew that this is where I needed to be. And on that walk to the train station on 18th Street or whatever it was, where you asked me to wait for you to have a conversation about this space that you wanted me to be in, I want to give you flowers because honestly, like, I didn't know that this space existed and you knew that I needed to be here. So I appreciate you for being the reason that I'm in this space.
Received. I love you. I love you. I love you. Thank you. With that being said, finding our final thoughts, share a message. Joe, I know you got another meeting you got to jump into. Would love to hear from you.
Yeah, God bless them. I'm grateful to Balance for including me. You know, I don't live there with y'all, so I'm grateful to be included and for having this conversation and just for creating this platform. I can tell you, my mom texts me every morning to tell me how she's going to do her balanced.
Yay!
And most of the time it's Manny. Every fifth workout is me. But that's okay because she's moving and she is committed to it. And, you know, I mean, that in itself was worth me being a part of this because she just feeling good about herself, telling all her friends about it. So I just have to say, I'm grateful to be a part of this community, grateful for this conversation, which is not always an easy one to have, and for Balance being willing to tackle this and share it with their community. So I'm grateful.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, honored to have you as well. Dr. Ward, sir, would you like to chime in with some final parting thoughts?
Yeah, just to say that, you know, a large part of the mission here at Balance is to make fitness accessible and to make fitness accessible to people who might be invisible in traditional fitness spaces. And so it's important that we just continue that work. I think we have a good product and a lot of good ideas, but let's continue to push those out into the wider world and make sure that it's reaching folks who do need a hand to find accessible fitness. I'm incredibly proud of the work that we've done, everyone in this group has done to create this, and let's make sure it's getting into the right hands.
Love, love, love. For those of you who are listening in, we're going to go over by a few minutes because I absolutely would love to hear from both Manny and Derek. And it is currently 1/2 the hour. So if you do have to go, this will be available later for a replay. But Miss Manny would love to hear from you, please.
I'm just so grateful to be part of this team. I've felt accepted from the beginning. I think acceptance is just part of who we are at Balance. I mean, we accept everyone who comes into class, all of our instructors. It's just such an accepting space. I've never had to put on anything. I come as I am, and it's so amazing to be able to do that. So I think, you know, we keep doing that, and we're doing the work we're supposed to do, which we're doing. So
thank you. We are so honored to have you, Manny. Absolutely. Derek, my smiling friend, would love to hear from you.
I echo all of the sentiments. It's a joy to be valued for you and what you contribute, and how you offer what it is that you're offering. And I feel that Balance does that, has done that. I remember I spoke with Bradford and he was like, I got this thing coming up. And then I didn't hear from him for a while. And then when it happened, I was like, yeah, this is one of the places I'm meant to be. And all I can say is that I've been blessed to be on this planet for 56 years. I've learned a lot, and I still feel like I don't know anything. But what I kind of think I know, I'm happy to share. And that's wherever it is, whether it's on this platform, if it's walking down the street and I see someone that's in need, or it's in the studio, I show up as Derek. And if you're in a class with me, there will probably be some house music because that's part of Derek. If you need me to assist you, then I move out of that mode and I'm catering to your needs, whether it's in the studio or if it's through the camera. I'm trying to be of service at all times. And again, this is a platform that allows me to do that, allows all of us to do that. And it's a blessing. It is a blessing. This moment is a blessing that we were able to come together and share our thoughts and potentially move to the next level as a group, to get our mission statement out there to more bodies, to more spirits, to getting more people to move, and for more people to honor where they are in their journey, to love the skin that they're in today and welcome the possibility of things to change. That's huge.
Thank you.
Thank you for facilitating, brother. Thank you.
I want to echo your words of welcoming the possibility to change. Like, can we be in a position for ourselves, for our communities, for our families, the strangers on the streets, to welcome the possibility of change? Derek, that's resonating so deeply. Huge bouquets of flowers to each of you. Specifically to my man Bradford, who was my reason for joining, who was my brother from another mother, who is one of the best allies that I have in my life, for sitting me down and saying, I need you here because I need you to express what you do and express your voice. And it's emotional because I finally feel like I have the courage to set boundaries and to say no. And then I walked in and the entire staff, from Katie and Kelly to Lily and our wonderful production crew, who were all like, no, we're going to identify pronouns. We're going to be a welcoming space. And I've never worked for anyone in the years I've been doing this that caters to those specific needs. So huge thank you to the Balanced and the family. And again, ultimately highlighting this was a celebration, friends. Black History isn't just Black History Month. We celebrate Black History every day. When your ass pulls up, when your butt pulls up to a stoplight, please note that that stoplight was invented by a Black inventor. So let's just please highlight some of the notable facts. And with all that being said,
come on now, Caesar, preach.
Come on,
preach,
I'm not going to get on that soapbox.
Preach. Come on.
Because I'm trying to close this off. But with that being said, be sure to follow each of us. Come through and highlight us on IG or reach out via social media. I know I can speak for all of us when I say we welcome everyone's questions, concerns, comments, complaints, celebrations. One of my favorite things in the world is to hear from people like Barbara, who's one of our longtime listeners, and Barbara sending me messages online. So Barbara, if you're listening at some point, we love you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who is a part of this facility and in the capacity in which we continue to grow. And without you, we don't exist. Without us, you don't exist. So let us continue to be conduits to enhance the possibilities for change. Derek, those words are going to sear into my heart. Friends, thank you. All of the light and love inside of me honors the light and love inside each and every one of you. Continue, please, on paths of peace and clarity, and continue to trust the journey. Yo, we'll see you next time. Thank you all for tuning in.